Hi, I'm Vicki with GNR Design, and today I am working on a new Halloween witch wreath. This is my inspiration. I picked this little sign up a few years back at, I think, Michael's, and I'm just now getting around to using it. So as I go through the process, I'm going to kind of fade in and out so you don't get bored with the video and try to explain the different steps in the process of a Deco Mesh wreath. So this, right now I'm going to set this aside. The first thing I need to do, obviously, is cut my Deco Mesh. I have it'll be a 24-inch wreath when I'm finished. The wreath form starts out about 15 inches, and by the time you get all the mesh on, it'll end up about 24 inches. I'm trying to watch the Mevo to make sure that I am in the target so that you can see all my steps. What I'm going to be using is a 10-inch Deco Mesh roll. It's got the orange, purple, and black to coordinate with the sign. And here are my color choices on ribbons. So I'll be cutting those at 14-inch long ribbon tails. And then I just have some different little embellishments that I'm going to use on the wreath to kind of fill in. So I'm going to jump out now. I'm going to show you how I cut the mesh, and then we'll come back in and do the ribbons. Okay, now as you can see, I've already cut about 12 pieces of the Deco Mesh. On one of these work wreath frames, there's 18 twist ties. So I need 18 pieces. Like I said before, the mesh is 10 inches wide, and I am cutting each of these pieces 15 inches long. This particular mesh, I can't remember where I got it, but you can buy Deco Mesh about anywhere. This time of the year, there's actually some pretty good mesh at like Hobby Lobby and some of the craft stores. I think I bought this wholesale online, but anyway, I've got about 12 pieces cut. What I'm doing is measuring it out, the length of my mat, and it's got a grid that I can use for the measurements, and I'm cutting each of the pieces 15 inches wide, or 15 inches long. So I need about 6 more pieces. And by spreading it out like this, rolling it out on the mat, you could use a pair of scissors or whatever, but I use a roller, and by spreading it out like this, I can cut 2 pieces at once, at least 2 pieces. Sometimes I cut the pieces shorter, but for this wreath, since it's the only type of mesh that I'm using, hopefully, if it makes it as thick as I think it will, I will just be using this particular mesh. And my blade apparently needs changed. They do get dull. This is the same kind of cutting utensil that you would use for material. I'm sure it has a professional name, but I don't know what it is. Okay, we need 2 more pieces. And that should give us all the mesh that we need for this wreath. What I'm going to be using, the technique I'm going to be using for this wreath is called a Ruffle Technique. And when I get to that, I will show you how to create the little ruffles that go into the wreath frame. I'm just going to set this aside. I may need to cut some more. If I end up having holes here and there, sometimes I'll come back and cut an extra piece to fill in, but we'll see. So now the next step is to cut your ribbons. I have 4 different color coordinating ribbons, and I always use 2 large ribbons. These are 2.5 inch wide, and then 2 of the smaller ribbons that are 1.5 inches, and they all color coordinate. The theme, obviously, on this particular wreath is a witch theme, and this ribbon has like the little witch hat and the feet. So that's where I'm going to start. to cut my ribbons, I have several different boards that are cut at different lengths. It just makes cutting the ribbon tails a little bit quicker. You don't have to use that. When I first started making wreaths, I just measured my ribbon out and cut it with scissors that way, but this does make it a little bit faster, and it's just cheap scraps of wood that my husband has cut for me to the different lengths. These are 14-inch, a board that's 14 inches long, and that's the size I typically like to use on a Deco Mesh wreath. And it makes it easier because, now hopefully you can see above my pile of mesh here, because I can use this board to measure out all the ribbon tails at once and cut them all at once, just like this. And that's the end of that ribbon. Now typically for a wreath like this, it has 18 twist ties, and I would use I would cut 9 different pieces of the ribbon tails so that I could use the ribbon combinations half and half, 9 in one set of twist ties and 9 in the other set. Well, on this one, obviously, I have come up just a little bit short, and I'm going to have to add a different ribbon that's very similar for this particular wreath. This one gives me 5, so I will use another ribbon that's just like this, just a different shade, for the last 4 for this one. And what makes it so much nicer is you can, if your scissors are sharp enough, cut the ribbon tails like this all at one time, and you have your 9 different pieces of ribbon, and then you can come back in and dovetail them. So I'm going to step away, get all my ribbons prepped, and I'll be back in to show you the finishing touch. But you use the board to cut all your ribbon tails, and then I dovetail each piece, and then just go through. I'll show you how I twist them into the wreath. Okay, I have the base of our wreath done. Isn't that pretty? It filled in quite nicely, and this is what we're going to come back through and add all of our ribbon tails to, and then our sign and any other embellishments that I want to add to the wreath. So now I'm just going to start adding our ribbon tails. Now, since I did have to ad-lib a little bit with some extra different color, same pattern ribbon tails, I'm going to add these in first because I'll have to mix and match them and we'll figure out where they fit. But I don't want them to end up all on the same side. So I'm going to add these first. And to add your ribbon tails, you just lay the small piece on top of the big piece, find the center or what's close to the center, it doesn't have to be exact, and crunch it up in the center like this, and open one of the twist ties and lay it in. And then when you twist it back in, that time give it a couple of good hard twists, because you probably won't need to open those twist ties back up. That's kind of the final, unless you're adding a bow or something like that. And then you want to separate your ribbon tails so that they're kind of crisscrossed, and give them just a little curl so they look like this. And then you alternate your patterns back and forth all the way through the wreath. Now, like I said, I may have to finagle these around a little bit, but I'm going to try, and I won't know until I get further along with the wreath if this is going to work. I'm going to try adding these oddball ribbon ties in first because I don't want them to end up side by side. So we're going to add these, give them a little twist and a little curve. And then I'll put the last two on the bottom, kind of in the middle. And then we can add in all of the other ones. Typically, this is not the way I would do it. I would just alternate patterns back and forth all the way around the wreath. But with these being oddballs, we're going to have to change it up just a little. So I guess you get to see how to adjust if, you know, you run short on a ribbon, or you just make a mistake and cut them the wrong size or something like that. You can always adjust. So here's what we've got. I've got one here, and one here. And I will put the other one, there's 4, on the bottom between the 2 that I put on the top. And like I said, as I go through this process, if they still end up being in the wrong place, then I'll just shift them around. We're going to see how this works. Honestly, I don't know. Hopefully it'll be fine. There is no perfect science to this. So I'm opening a twist tie, laying my ribbons in, giving it a couple of good twists as I lay them back down. Let me see if I can zoom in here just a little more so you see what I'm working on a little bit better. See, there we have the purple in all the right places. And now we'll go back through and add the other ones, the patterns alternating back and forth. And if we need to adjust these, we will. So we started here on the bottom. I usually start adding my ribbon ties in on the bottom. I don't know why. It doesn't matter. You can start on the top or the bottom, either way. But since I have a purple, the first pattern, the witch feet, and the purple and orange stripe here, now I'm going to come in with my next pattern, which is these 2. Lay them on top, and then I'm going to put it in the next twist tie on the bottom of this wreath. And then we will have a start, and then we can alternate as we go along the wreath. I'm opening it, laying it in there, giving it a couple good hard twists, opening up my ties. I will do a video shot from behind so that you can see from over my shoulder, but it's really pretty basic. So now we have this pattern, this pattern, and this pattern side by side. So we've got to start, and we just keep going all the way around the wreath. And I will come back, I'm sure, 100 times and fluff all these ribbons back and forth because it's just a pet peeve if they're not fluffed up. I think it is for everyone. So this part is going to get a little monotonous, a little boring. But I want you to see the concept of how I'm adding these in. They're just alternating patterns. The witch feet, the orange and black, and then another witch feet. And I'm going to do this all the way around the bottom ring and all the way around the top ring. So let me add these in, and I'll be right back, and we'll go over the process again and how I finished it up.